Hey everyone. So today, this video is going to be a little bit different. It's a little bit more personal. I wanted to make this video to document my experience with chronic illness, and I'm not sure how often I'll be making videos on this particular topic, but I kind of wanted to put this out there because it really helped me a lot to hear about other people's experience with chronic illness and listen to their story about their health issues. So, this is also partially to explain why my upload schedule has been so spotty and why it will probably just continue to be more fragmented every few months or so. I was recently diagnosed with Lyme disease, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, undermethylation, toxoplasmosis, and Parvovirus and Reactivated Epstein-barr. So, I have a kitty and a dog virus because the Parvovirus, there's like a version that affects only dogs, and obviously there's a human version, which is the one that I have. And then the Toxoplasmosis is like a kitty. Cats are carriers for that. So I also have a ton of food allergies and food sensitivities. Some of those resulted from the Lyme, so that's going to be probably the beef, the dairy, maybe yeast. It's unlikely that I had a beef allergy before I contracted the Lyme, but it's hard to tell. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where I got it from, but I am allergic to it now. And I was diagnosed with all this a few weeks ago, so it's been 3 or 4 weeks, but I've definitely been dealing with the effects of being chronically ill for longer than that. And it all started around 2015. I was working a pretty high-stress job. I had a 1 or 1.5 hour commute each way every single day, and I had the ability to take my work laptop home, which is not something I would ever advise anyone to do because I would end up working like 60-hour weeks or more because I would just write quotes when I was watching TV or answer emails at like all hours of the night. And I was in kind of a stressful relationship at that time. So altogether, I just had a lot of stress, and it was a really busy time period in my life. I'd had a bunch of concussions as well and some memory problems. I had the occasional migraine here or there, but I never really considered myself as having chronic health issues. So my health was never at the forefront of anything that I did, and I really didn't pay good attention to my body or anything like that for a very long time. And eventually, that did not pay off. The migraines became more severe. They lasted much longer. Sometimes I would have to pull over on the side of the road on my way to work because I would have to like open the door and like throw up, or I would faint like into the passenger seat of my car, and I would just have to kind of wait it out. I would be late. Sometimes I didn't know if I could safely get to my office because I was having so much photosensitivity and pain that it made it really hard to see the road. So it was dangerous for me to be driving, but I had to go somewhere. There was one time when I came into my office, and right as I walked in, I just passed out. And apparently the guys from the inside sales desks that were right inside the door at that office had to put me in a like one of those rolling computer chairs and take me to an office where someone was on vacation, and then they put their coats on the floor so that I could lay there for a few hours until I regained consciousness. So it was bad. It was embarrassing. And it was always a risk. Anytime I went out, anytime I went to work, anytime I really did anything, I could get a migraine. So I had to step down from my position at that job, and at the time it was the most money I'd ever made in my life. So it also had a lot more potential for growth than some of the other jobs that I had done. I did a lot of retail, and I worked a lot of minimum wage jobs because I left school early for personal reasons. So it was really upsetting that I had to give up that potential career where I could be making just normal office worker money. Even though it was still a sales position, there was definitely a little more room to grow in that company, and I had tried really, really hard to get to the place that I had been. So I dropped down into an admin position there, and there was a whole thing that went on with that. But I stayed in that position for another like year and a half, and the stressful relationship that I was in also ended sometime around like the end of 2015, or no, the end of 2016. And so that around that time period, I was going through a ton of really big life changes, and it was really taking a toll on my already kind of slowly diminishing health. I started my relationship with my current boyfriend in early 2017, and he was really instrumental in getting me through some of the worst times health-wise. I'm skipping over a lot of the stuff that happened at work, but eventually I did have to leave that job altogether. I took 2 total medical leaves under FMLA, and in the States, that's the Family Medical Leave Act, and it only ensures that you won't get fired for taking time off to take care of your own serious health problem or that of a loved one, but does not give you any kind of pay. So I was off work. You have to pay for your own insurance. There's no, you don't continue to receive the same price that your work may pay for a portion of your health insurance, and you're not getting any income. So I was seeing doctors, I was going to the hospital, and I ended up accruing a lot of medical debt. It was thousands of dollars of medical debt, and my parents had to help me out with that. They paid a lot of the direct hospital bills, some living expenses, some of my bills and stuff like that. And it was just a really, I'm thankful that they were in a position to do that, and I'm really privileged that they even had enough money to help me with that. But it was really, really, really stressful, and it was really embarrassing, and it was just a really, really hard time for me and my family as well because of that. Neurologists became really like I don't want to say like enemies, but kind of they were just really unhelpful. I felt like they had given up on me, and at some point I had a 3-day EEG, and that's when they stick like electrodes on your head to read your brain waves, and it was mainly to determine if I had epilepsy. So you carry around this little machine that looks like a mini amp, and I believe it also records you if you're having like a migraine or some unusual brain activity. And at the time that I had that test, my migraines were getting further apart, and it hit at a time when I just didn't have one. So it was really frustrating. And when they took the electrodes off, they didn't tell me, and I didn't think to really ask, but they were using acetone, which broke a lot of my hair. I had like really, really, really long hair that I hadn't, I had that for like, I think 3 years. It was like right below my waist. So when they took the electrodes off with the acetone, it broke and damaged a lot of my hair to the point where like one whole section in the back was totally like broken right up here. So like the front of my hair was waist length, and then there was this chomp of hair that was just gone. And it really kind of felt like that was the culmination of how all of the emotions that I was feeling about how bad my health was, how awful it was to keep getting all these migraines, and how stressed I was. And I just had like a total breakdown because vanity-wise, my hair was really important to me, and I wasn't ready to cut it. I wasn't even thinking about it, and no one had told me, and it was just it's just a lot of issues that I have with the quality of life considerations in the medical field. um, to them it's just a test, right? To them it's just, oh, I ordered an EEG to see if you have this thing. But for me, it was yet another expensive test that didn't turn up anything useful. I didn't get any real help from that. And then in addition, it really added additional stress because I had to cut my hair that I was really emotionally attached to. So, also on one of my hospital visits, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, which is the leading cause of hyperthyroidism. But I really felt that that did not fit with what symptoms I was experiencing. So I looked up some stuff. It felt more like Hashimoto's, and I only had one inconclusive follow-up test for that at the time, but I couldn't afford to keep seeing the endocrinologist that I was seeing, so nothing really came of it at that time. And then in November of 2019, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So that explained a lot of the chronic pain I'd been living with. But it was also tough because one of my best friends was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and I kept doubting myself all the time because she observed that we were experiencing a lot of the same symptoms, and I was just so reluctant to say, like, maybe I do have this, because I just thought, like, is my body reacting to the fact that she has it? Like, am I just making this up because I'm hearing about, like, what she's going through, and am I making myself sick? Like, am I giving up just because I have all this other health stuff that's going on, and am I looking for an explanation so hard that I'm making myself feel this way? So there was a lot of doubt that I had with that diagnosis, and it's just really, it was a weird time for sure. And then one day I woke up and I felt like I had been hit by a truck, and there was no reason for it. I hadn't done any strenuous exercise. I hadn't really done anything that would make me feel that way, but it definitely gave me the sense that, like, no, this is not in your head. Something's definitely wrong. So from that point, I began to accept that as a lot of the cause for not only the migraines, but also a lot of the fatigue and the cognitive issues. There were times when I had a lot of pain. It happens a lot in my legs where I could barely walk, and that seemed consistent with some people's experience of fibromyalgia, but it was a little unusual that it was, like, so concentrated in my legs. So also in, like, mid 2019, I started working at my boyfriend's mom's office that she owns for her company. So earlier this year, I had asked to work from home, or not this year, earlier last year, I had asked to work from home when I had bad fibromyalgia flare-ups, and she was open to me taking time for that, but she didn't want me to work from home consistently, which really surprised me because she is so like, invested in my health, and she's always really genuinely asking how I'm doing, like, not just as an employee, but as someone that she actually really cares about. And she suggested that I see their family doctor. And I had mostly given up on doctors. The only doctor that I was regularly seeing, and, like, regularly was every, like, few months or so, was the rheumatologist that my best friend was seeing in New York. So that person was the only reason why I went, being as disillusioned as I am with the medical professionals. That was mainly because I trust my friend, and I wouldn't have gone. She like went with me to the office. She helped me schedule the appointment. She had an appointment back to back with the rheumatologist, and we were able to sit in each other's appointments, and it was just really helpful because I was scared to death that I would get diagnosed, and I was also scared that I wouldn't get diagnosed, and it was just a really tough time. So having her there for all that and to support me through all that was just invaluable, and I couldn't turn it down either when she suggested that I go. So I was really thankful for that. But it seemed like I wasn't really getting kind of a full treatment plan, just because I live in Maryland and my doctor, being in New York, is really far away, and there's only so much they can do when you can't go in, I think, more frequently for like tests in their office and with their lab and things like that. So I think that I was lacking a solid treatment plan, but I didn't really want to pursue that because of the amount of stress and medical debt that I had been in before. So my boyfriend's mom actually offered to pay for me to go to their family doctor. That doctor is a boutique doctor. They do not take regular insurance, and as a result are very expensive. It's like $400 for one appointment. But she offered to pay for it and for whatever tests and medicine I needed, and I actually took her up on it, which she had asked a few different times, so it wasn't the first time she had offered that, but I was getting to the point where I wasn't sure if I could keep working with how often I was having such severe pain issues and other like brain fog and just cognitive difficulties. Like, since she owns the company, she is pretty financially comfortable, and I knew that also, she was kind of asking for her and her family, since Mike, my boyfriend, cares about me so much, and she's always treated me basically like family with them. So I think in addition to being worried about me as a person, she also it's easier for her not to worry about her son worrying about me also, because in a lot of the darkest times of my migraine stuff, there were times when I was in the hospital and he would go visit me like every day and just spend the whole day there, and all he did was like go home once or twice to walk the dog and maybe grab something to eat. But the amount of care and time that he had to put into taking care of me was really a lot. And I think, knowing that, I think that was another reason for her extremely generous offer. So I did end up taking her up on that. So I ended up seeing that doctor, and she is amazing. The first appointment was like 4 hours, but she took my whole life's history. It was basically like she asked a lot of questions that were about my mental health, about things that had happened, both like medically or like potential exposures to like mold or just anything. And I thought that I had had a full blood work panel done before at the hospital, and I thought I had been tested for Lyme. I thought I had been tested for Hashimoto's. Well, I knew I had been tested for some kind of thyroid dysfunction, but she ran everything, and she found all of that stuff and has me on this extremely like full-bodied treatment plan. Now, this comes with the caveat of the treatment. So the Lyme antibiotics that I took for 2 weeks and that I just finished up around 2 weeks ago at the time I'm filming this were pretty difficult. I ended up having a common reaction to the Lyme bacteria dying off. The tails of the bacteria, or the little spirochetes, they collect in your cells, and they have your body has a reaction to that. So it's different for everyone. A lot of people get like flu-like symptoms like fatigue and chills and like some pain and things like that. I was pretty lucky in that regard, but I also had this extreme vertigo where I couldn't even sit up for more than a few minutes without feeling just like the whole world was spinning. I definitely couldn't stand for any length of time, and I actually had to take off work for the time that I was finishing up the medication because it was just, I couldn't even really look at a computer or anything like that. And that's part of why I was having such a hard time with it. But also, I have 30 capsules a day that I have to take of just medication, like supplements and things. And I have to add on to that number after I do some more tests. But it's to address like all of the different viruses and diseases that I have. And it's really a lot of, it's just a lot. It's a lot, and it was a lot to hear about at once and kind of deal with, because even though it was really hard not having any kind of diagnosis, I found out about all this stuff on the same day. I wasn't expecting anything to come back because I thought that a lot of these tests had already been done. But I mean, she really sat down and explained to me every single test why she felt like this XYZ blood work was significant, or why these numbers are elevated, or why this thing further gives evidence for this thing being a problem that I have. So I definitely trust in her diagnosis, and she gives me enough to do that information-wise without even me having to ask. So I'm really glad to have diagnosis, but it's a lot to deal with, and you kind of grieve for, you know, the life that you had when you were ignorant of these things. Like, even if you were suffering, it just seems, it's just different once you know why. So I wouldn't say it's like better or worse, but it's definitely more helpful having something to put down on paper, because then other people's expectations are a little bit more in line with what your experience is internally. So I think that's definitely a helpful aspect of it. And another thing that I'm really struggling with is my diet has to be altered pretty drastically because, of course, you know, I'm going to make a separate video all about food, because that's definitely the part of this that I am having the most difficulty with, because I just have a lot to say about food. I love food, and I had used it as a coping mechanism and for my mental health, and I had to build, you know, this better relationship with food from the ground up, and now it's totally different again. So that's kind of the full overview of my history, a little bit before I got diagnosed with all this stuff. And as long as it's been, I'm still pretty lucky, especially in the frame of the particular things that I've been diagnosed with. So fibromyalgia, Lyme, Hashimoto's, those are all things that people have gone decades suffering and getting worse with these conditions without having any kind of diagnosis, because some of these things are controversial in the medical community, and people don't quite understand to what degree these things can affect your life. So I am really happy to be receiving treatment for it again. And I'm luckier because I was diagnosed in general, and it didn't take me that long to find a doctor that did find out what was actually wrong with me, that kind of cared enough to look into that. But it definitely is not the case for, I think, the majority of people that I've seen with these conditions. So that doesn't, you know, I don't I want to say that probably the hardest part of everything is the migraines. Struggling with having these awful, debilitating migraines every day and having a lot of pain and fatigue with no answers for even as long as I went without answers, really pushed me to kind of the limits of myself. And people really don't understand kind of like the day in, day out struggle that it is if they don't have chronic illness. And of course, everyone experiences these things differently. So, like, I think that I'm pretty lucky in that my Lyme disease, I think, was mainly causing the issues with my legs and leg pain, whereas other people have like heavier fatigue issues, or they have migraines, but they come from the Lyme and things like that. So, you know, everyone has a different experience, even if the diagnosis is the same. And I think, you know, I'm pretty lucky in regards to that as well. So, you know, as tough as it is, like all I can speak to is my own feelings about it and my own experience with it. And I do think it's important that people with these chronic illnesses kind of give their story, because as hard as it is for me to talk about, and as much as I'm kind of like still in the thick of dealing with diagnosis and things, I want to have this for myself too, for it to be like, hey, you know, this is, I'm just adding to the, you know, people out there that are willing to share what it's like, kind of when it's like fresh in my mind, because it's always really helpful for me whenever I've been struggling with my health to look up other people talking about their experience with similar health issues, because it just makes me feel not quite so alone, or like nobody understands what I'm going through. That's certainly not the case. There are plenty of people with chronic illness out there, and you know, finding the people that are talking about those experiences really helped me to get through some really tough times. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you're in that place, I really I feel you. Like, you know, like I really hope that you have as good of a support system as I've been fortunate to have. And, you know, I just hope for relief for like all of us, really. And having to struggle with chronic illness in addition to the general stress and tension around COVID is pretty difficult in a very unique way. So if you liked this video, or were curious about any aspect of things that I may have touched on, and you want me to make other videos on the topic, let me know in the comments, because like I said, I'm not quite sure how much I'll be talking about this, but I want to, you know, if people are interested, I definitely want to give my opinion on it. So but normally my content is more focused on witchy stuff, crafting stuff, planning stuff, and like art stuff. So also, if you're interested in that, give this video a like and consider subscribing to my channel. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'm sorry this video is kind of a bummer, but hopefully it was helpful to some of you. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.